I always thought mothers were meant to be the first name on a wedding guest list, not the last one scratched off. But I should have known better the moment I met Claire. Her smile never quite reached her eyes, and her compliments were laced with control. When my son, Daniel, told me he'd proposed, I hugged him, smiled, and prayed silently that she'd learn to love him half as much as I did. Instead, she learned how to use him. The invitation never came. Weeks passed, then months. Everyone in town whispered about the upcoming wedding at the Willow Creek Chapel, but my mailbox stayed empty. It wasn't until I ran into Claire's aunt at the grocery store that I learned the truth. "Oh, Martha, dear," she said, shifting awkwardly, "I thought you knew. Claire thought it might be best if you sat this one out. She doesn't want any, well, old-fashioned outbursts." Old-fashioned. That's what they called me now. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea gone cold. My hands trembled, not from age, but from rage. To them, I was an embarrassment, the widow who still believed in manners, morals, and honesty. But what Claire didn't know was that I also believed in something else, the truth. And the truth, once found, refuses to stay buried. The first sign came from Daniel's best man, Ethan. I'd always seen something in his eyes when he looked at Claire, something that wasn't friendship. People think the elderly don't notice such things. They're wrong. We see more than we let on, we've simply learned when to stay quiet. Still, curiosity itched at me like an old wound. So I watched. I listened. I asked questions that sounded harmless. And within weeks, I found what I was looking for: proof. Proof that my son's perfect bride had been sharing far more than secrets with his best man. It took only one night of waiting outside a hotel to confirm it. I saw them through the glass, her hand on his cheek, his arm around her waist. My camera clicked once, and the truth was mine. I didn't storm in or scream. I went home, printed the photos, and placed them in a small velvet box. Then I wrapped it in silver paper and tied it with a white ribbon. Simple, elegant, devastating. I bought a pale blue dress the next morning. The kind that whispers money and dignity, the kind that makes people regret underestimating you. So when the day came, I didn't stay home. I walked into that church like I'd been invited, chin high, heart steady, truth in hand. They forgot to invite me to the wedding. But I arrived anyway. And I brought a gift they'd never forget. The church bells tolled like they were warning someone. Maybe they were. I arrived 10 minutes before the ceremony, my heels clicking against the marble steps, echoing louder than I intended. Heads turned. A few gasps slipped through painted lips. I could almost taste their whispers. "She came anyway." I smiled. Yes, I did. My pale blue dress caught the light from the stained glass windows as I walked in. The silver gift box rested in my hands, small and unassuming. People made space for me without saying a word. It wasn't fear, not exactly, more like curiosity wrapped in discomfort. No one knew what to do with an uninvited guest who looked entirely too calm. Daniel stood at the altar, handsome, nervous, glowing with love that hadn't yet been betrayed. When he saw me, his eyes widened, confusion flickering into something softer. He mouthed, "Mom?" I nodded once. He smiled faintly. Poor boy. Claire turned around just then. I watched her face freeze in that perfect, porcelain expression she practiced so well. She didn't dare make a scene, not here, not in front of her perfect guests. Her mother, seated in the front row, looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. I found a seat in the back pew and placed the silver box gently beside me. Inside were the photographs, the proof of what she'd done. But I wasn't here to throw a tantrum. I was here to let the truth speak for itself. As the music began, I watched the ceremony unfold like a slow-moving tragedy. Every word of the vows tasted bitter. For better or for worse, Claire said, smiling sweetly, glancing at Ethan, who stood just to Daniel's right. Their eyes met for half a second, long enough for guilt to flicker. Long enough for me to know that my timing was perfect. When the priest finally said, "If anyone here has reason these two should not be joined," oh, how tempting it was to stand. But no. That would have been too easy. Too predictable. Instead, I waited until the reception. The hall was drenched in laughter, champagne, and false joy. I sat quietly at a corner table, sipping sparkling water. Nobody dared ask me to leave. That's the thing about dignity, when you wear it right, it becomes armor. When it was time for gifts, Claire's maid of honor carried the silver box up to the couple. "From Mrs. Weller," she said softly. Claire hesitated before untying the ribbon. I watched her fingers tremble. She recognized the handwriting on the tag. "To Daniel and Claire, with love." She lifted the lid. For a moment, silence blanketed the room. Then a photo fluttered out, Claire and Ethan, caught in that forbidden embrace. Gasps. Murmurs. Chairs scraped. The band stopped mid-song. Daniel's face turned pale, then red, then blank. Claire's tears came too late. And I just took another sip of water. For a few seconds, no one breathed. The room was frozen, a perfect still image of horror, guilt, and disbelief. Claire's fingers shook as she fumbled with the rest of the photos. More slipped out, scattering across the table like cursed confetti. Daniel stared down at them, his jaw locked, eyes glassy. The crowd around them murmured, gasped, whispered names like sharp blades cutting through the air. I didn't move. I simply sat there, letting the chaos unfold. My revenge didn't need shouting, it only needed silence. Silence makes truth echo louder. Ethan was the first to speak. "This isn't what it looks like," he stammered, his voice cracking. The kind of line men use when they know they've already lost. Claire turned on him, face pale, lipstick smeared, desperation dripping from her voice. "Say something. Tell them it was old, tell them she's lying." I almost laughed. Lying? Oh, sweetheart, if I lied half as well as she did, I'd be running a country. Daniel picked up one of the photos, the clearest one, where Claire's hand rested tenderly on Ethan's cheek. I saw the exact moment his heart broke, it showed in his eyes before his tears did. He didn't yell. Didn't throw the cake or smash a glass. No, my son just looked at her with the quiet kind of rage that comes from disbelief. "When?" he asked, voice low. "Daniel, please dash." "When?" Her silence was her confession. The crowd started to disperse, pretending not to stare, pretending to care about decency. But everyone stayed close enough to hear. Claire's mother rushed forward, whispering frantic apologies, as if good manners could mop up humiliation. Ethan slipped out the side door like the coward he'd always been. Daniel stood there for a long time. Then he turned toward me. Our eyes met across the room, mother and son, connected by pain and blood and a single, shattering truth. He didn't say thank you. He didn't have to. Instead, he walked over to the microphone. "The wedding is over," he said simply. Then he walked out, leaving Claire standing in her white dress, surrounded by broken promises and pitying eyes. I watched her crumble. Not with joy, but with a strange kind of calm satisfaction. Justice, not cruelty. As I gathered my things, a few guests avoided looking at me. One older woman leaned in and whispered, "That was brutal." I smiled faintly. "No, dear," I said. "That was honest." Outside, the afternoon sun felt softer. The air smelled of rain and lilacs, clean, almost forgiving. I walked down the steps slowly, each click of my heel sounding like a closing chapter. In my car, I placed the empty silver box beside me. The ribbon still tied, neat as ever. Revenge doesn't have to be messy. It just has to be true. And the truth, that day, wore blue. The morning after the wedding that wasn't, I woke to silence. The kind that hangs heavy in a house that's seen too much truth. No phone calls. No knocks at the door. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the steady tick of the kitchen clock reminding me that time, at least, hadn't stopped. For the first time in years, I brewed coffee for one without sadness. It tasted different, not sweet, but steady. Around noon, the first message came. From Daniel. Mom. I need some time. Fair enough. I expected that. Love doesn't die cleanly, it rots slowly, and it leaves a mess behind. He needed space to understand that the woman he'd almost married had been cheating long before the vows. I didn't blame him for wanting distance, not from me, but from the truth itself. Still, part of me ached. I didn't do what I did to break him. I did it to save him. But salvation rarely looks gentle. By afternoon, the news had spread. Small towns love scandal the way bees love honey. The florist, the caterer, even the pastor's wife, everyone suddenly had an opinion about poor Daniel and that bold Mrs. Weller. Some called it courage. Others called it cruelty. I didn't bother defending myself. The truth doesn't need a lawyer. That evening, I sat on my porch and watched the sun sink behind the trees. The cicadas sang like nothing had changed. But everything had. Then headlights flashed across the yard. My heart jumped before my mind caught up. Daniel's truck. He didn't knock, just opened the door and stood there, looking tired. His eyes were red, not from crying, but from fighting it. He sat opposite me, hands clasped tight. I should have known, he said finally. The late-night calls, the way she'd leave parties with excuses. I said nothing. I just let him speak. She said you were trying to control me, he continued, voice trembling. She told me you didn't like her because she wasn't like Dad. She wasn't, I said softly. And that's not an insult. He nodded, staring at the horizon. I keep thinking about what you said once, that people show you who they are and how they treat those they don't need. That's the truth, I replied. She didn't need me to like her. She needed you to trust her. And she used that. Silence again, but it wasn't heavy anymore. It was healing. Before he left, Daniel hugged me. Not the quick kind, but the kind that speaks in apologies and forgiveness without saying a word. As he drove away, I finally let out a long breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. I didn't destroy a wedding that day. I stopped a lifetime of lies before they could begin. And somehow, that felt holy. I should have known she wouldn't stay silent. Claire was never the type to lose gracefully. 3 days after the ruined wedding, her revenge began, small, petty things at first, like whispers that spread faster than wildfire. She told anyone who would listen that I'd faked the photos. That I'd always hated her, that I was jealous of losing my son. I heard it from the cashier at the market, the librarian, even my neighbor, who suddenly forgot how to wave. But I'd lived long enough to know that gossip is a snake that bites its own tail. All I had to do was wait. Still, I won't lie, it stung. To walk into church and feel eyes slide away, to hear the hush of conversations that stop when you pass. It reminded me of high school, the cruelty of small minds wrapped in Sunday smiles. Then came the article. Someone, I'm guessing Claire's mother, leaked the story to a local gossip blog. Mother of the groom sabotages wedding out of spite. It painted me as some bitter old widow who couldn't stand to see her son happy. They even used a photo of me walking into the church, my gift box in hand, like I was carrying a bomb instead of the truth. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the headline. My first instinct was anger. My second was laughter. Because in their desperation to rewrite history, they'd reminded everyone there was a story worth talking about. The phone rang later that night. Unknown number. I answered. Her voice was cold, rehearsed. You think you won, don't you? Claire, I said, quietly. I didn't win anything. I just stopped pretending. You ruined my life. No, I replied, you did that yourself. I just turned on the lights. She hung up before I could say more. I sat there for a long time, listening to the dial tone, wondering how someone so young could already sound so hollow. A week passed. Then Daniel came by again, holding a folded newspaper. You saw this? He asked. I nodded. I did. He sighed. She's saying you edited those photos. That Ethan's denying everything. Of course he is, I said. Cowards always deny the fire even when they're covered in smoke. He smiled faintly, the first real smile I'd seen since the wedding. I told them to stop talking about you. I told them the truth. My throat tightened. And what did they say? They said it didn't matter, he shrugged. I told them it mattered to me. For a moment, I couldn't speak. My son, my boy who'd been blinded by love, was finally seeing clearly. Claire could smear my name across every wall in town, but I had something she'd never touch again, Daniel's trust. Reputation fades. Truth stays. And her revenge, just like her love, wouldn't last the season. It was a Thursday, the kind of gray morning that makes you think the sky forgot how to wake up. I was baking cornbread when the knock came. 3 sharp raps on the door. Not polite. Not hesitant. When I opened it, there she was. Claire. She looked nothing like a bride. Her perfect curls had wilted, her eyes were hollowed from sleepless nights, and her expensive perfume couldn't hide the stench of desperation. For a moment, we just stood there, the woman who ruined her wedding and the woman who nearly ruined my son. Can I come in? She asked. I stepped aside, though every instinct told me not to. Letting snakes in doesn't make them less venomous, it just gives them somewhere warm to coil. She sat at my kitchen table, the same one I'd once imagined us sharing Sunday dinners around. She traced the edge of her coffee cup with trembling fingers. You destroyed everything, she said finally. No, Claire, I said quietly. You did that. I just refused to lie about it. She looked up at me then, and for the first time, I saw her mask crack. Not anger, not even guilt. Just fear. I loved him, she said, voice breaking. You think I didn't? But Ethan dash. Ethan? I interrupted. The man who hasn't called you since that day? The man who left you standing there while the town watched you fall apart? Her silence was answer enough. I leaned back, folding my hands. You wanted the kind of love that looks perfect in pictures. But marriage isn't built for cameras. It's built for storms. And you weren't ready for one. Her jaw clenched. You think you're so righteous. No, I said. Just old enough to know the difference between regret and repentance. She stood suddenly, knocking the chair back. You took my future. I met her gaze steadily. I saved my sons. For a long moment, we stared at each other, 2 women bound by a man who now wanted nothing to do with either of us. Then, without another word, she stormed out, her heels clicking like gunshots against the floor. I watched from the window as she drove off, the dust of the old road rising behind her like smoke from a dying fire. I should have felt triumphant. But I didn't. There's something hollow about victory when it's soaked in heartbreak. Later that evening, Daniel called. She came by your place, didn't she? She did, I said. He sighed. She told me she just wanted you to admit you set her up. I smiled bitterly. Some people can't face the truth, Daniel. It's easier to hate the messenger. He was quiet for a moment, then said softly, Thank you, Mom. For everything. After he hung up, I sat alone at the table, the cornbread cooling untouched. The house was silent again, but this time, it wasn't loneliness I felt. It was closure. It arrived on a Monday. No return address. Just my name, written in handwriting I recognized but couldn't place, delicate, uncertain, like someone trying too hard to seem calm. I almost didn't open it. At my age, letters usually bring two things, bad news or bills. But curiosity is a dangerous friend, it never quite leaves you, even when you should know better. Inside was a single sheet of ivory paper. My hands trembled when I unfolded it. Mrs. Weller. You were right. I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see that moment, the photos, the look on Daniel's face, the silence afterward. I don't know why I did what I did. Maybe I was scared of not being enough. Maybe I wanted to feel wanted. You think I'm evil, but I'm just weak. And weakness, I've learned, ruins everything it touches. Please tell Daniel I'm sorry. Not for the wedding, for the lies that made it necessary. Claire. I read it 3 times. Each word felt heavy, like a confession whispered to the wind. For the first time since the wedding, I felt something I hadn't expected, pity. I sat there for a long while, staring out the window at the yard where Daniel used to play. The sun was low, casting that golden light that makes everything look softer than it really is. Maybe that's why I didn't notice the tear until it landed on the page. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my drawer. I didn't call Daniel right away. Some truths don't need to be spoken the moment they're found. They need time to settle, to lose their sharpness. That evening, as the house darkened, I poured myself a glass of wine and let the memories come. Daniel's first heartbreak. His first job. The day he brought Claire home for dinner. She'd been so polite, so charming. I wanted to believe she loved him purely. But people like her, they love the idea of love, not the work it takes to keep it. The phone rang. It was Daniel. Hey, Mom, he said. I talked to Claire today. My heart stopped for a second. You did? She sent me a letter too, he said softly. She's moving away. Said she needed to start over somewhere no one knew her name. I nodded, though he couldn't see it. That's probably for the best. Yeah, he said after a pause. You were right about her. But I think she was right about me, too. I wanted a version of her that didn't exist. That's what love does, I whispered. It makes fools of us all. After we hung up, I opened my drawer again, staring at the letter one last time. Then I lit a match, watched the paper curl and blacken, until nothing but ash remained. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's letting go before the past decides to stay. It's been 6 months since the wedding that never was, and I still keep the silver gift box on my mantel, empty now, polished clean. People sometimes ask why I keep it, like it's a trophy. But it's not. It's a reminder of truth, of strength, and of what happens when silence becomes a weapon. Life, as it tends to, found a way to keep moving. Daniel bought a small house on the edge of town. He works longer hours now, spends weekends fishing, learning how to cook things that aren't burnt. He's healing, slowly, honestly. And that's more than I ever hoped for. As for me, I've gone back to my routines. Church on Sundays. Gardening on Tuesdays. A bit of gossip at the hair salon on Fridays, though these days, I prefer listening over talking. Let the young folks have their drama, I've had my share. But sometimes, when the evenings are long and the world feels too quiet, I still think about her. Claire. I picture her somewhere far away, maybe working in a cafe or sitting by a window, trying to rebuild what's left of her life. I don't hate her anymore. I can't. Hate is too heavy for these old bones. I hope she learned something from the ruins, the way I did. Last night, Daniel invited me over for dinner. Just the two of us, no occasion. He grilled salmon, poured wine, and asked if I'd make one of my old toasts like I used to when his father was alive. I hesitated, then raised my glass. To love, I said. The kind that survives truth. He smiled, that same crooked smile his father had, and clinked his glass to mine. For a moment, the years melted away. I saw the boy he was, the man he became, and the son who finally understood why his mother did what she did. When I drove home, the moon followed me like an old friend. The road was empty, quiet, peaceful, no whispers, no stares, no regrets. Just me and the hum of the tires beneath a forgiving sky. I parked the car, walked inside, and poured one last glass of wine. Sitting by the mantel, I looked at that silver box again. I thought about how something so small could carry so much truth, how one choice, one moment of courage, could unravel a lifetime of lies. I raised my glass toward it and whispered, "Here's to you, the truth that cost me peace but gave me freedom." Then I drank slowly, savoring the silence. They forgot to invite me to the wedding. But I came anyway. And I left with something far more lasting than revenge, clarity. Because in the end, revenge fades. But truth? Truth lingers like the echo of a bell long after it stopped ringing.